You ever notice the paradox, I mean, of the smart mistake?
Oh, absolutely.
You see these incredibly bright people, executives, doctors, expert investors, and they just keep making the same basic errors again and again. It
Yeah.
feels like it should be about raw intelligence, but these people are sharp. They read constantly. So why? Why these blind spots? Why the avoidable failures?
It's a really fascinating tension, isn't it? And I think it usually boils down less to, like, mental horsepower
Right.
and more about the quality of the tools they're using, the intellectual toolkit.
So not the engine, but the map.
Exactly. It's the internal mapping system that's guiding the engine. And, in a world that's increasingly driven by AI, where every decision gets accelerated just lightning fast, the quality of that map, of our sound human judgment guiding the AI,
Yeah.
that becomes maybe the single most critical skill.
That makes me think immediately of Charlie Munger. He was so blunt about it.
Yeah, Munger's great on this.
He said, "In my whole life, I have known no wise people who didn't read all the time. None. Zero. Simple enough."
The starting point.
But, like you said, reading is just the entry ticket. He added, you need the temperament to grab ideas and do sensible things.
Yes. The temperament.
And that seems to be the missing piece for so many brilliant people, the ability to connect things, to actually apply the knowledge diversely.
That ability to connect ideas. That's exactly what we're digging into today.
Okay.
Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive. We're pulling some really crucial material today from Poor Ash's Almanac, which is produced by Askeladden Capital.
Right.
And it focuses squarely on those ideas that sharpen judgment. The central concept here is something called multidisciplinary rationality.
Multidisciplinary rationality. Okay, sounds a bit academic, like an MBA course.
Does sound a bit formal, but honestly, the concept itself is beautifully simple and incredibly practical.
Okay, break it down.
It's kind of the ultimate shortcut, really. It just means actively reading broadly.
Across different fields.
Exactly. Pulling the big, timeless concepts, these mental models from psychology, economics, physics, history, engineering.
Yeah.
You name it.
Okay.
And then, crucially, learning how to weave those models together into a cohesive structure, like a lattice work in your head.
The lattice work. Munger again.
Munger again. So they interact productively in any given situation. It lets you make much better decisions. We're not just talking, say, supply and demand in isolation.
Yeah.
We're talking about combining supply and demand with thinking about incentives, maybe confirmation bias, feedback loops, all layered together.
Got it. So the mission for you listening right now is to grasp how building this kind of robust mental map, this lattice work, is probably the most effective path to being, well, happier, healthier, wealthier.
Yes.
And just more effective in whatever you do. Managing a company, managing a family. It applies everywhere.
Absolutely. Let's jump in.
We often talk about success being about grit, right? Effort. We value hard work, diligence.
Of course.
But what happens when you're super diligent following a bad map, a flawed conceptual model?
Then diligence becomes the fastest way to get really, really lost.
Exactly. It proves that when hard work fails, it's often the map, not the effort. That's the root problem.
Absolutely. The fundamental mistake here is something Don Norman warned about way back in The Design of Everyday Things.
The design classic about refrigerators and doors.
Yeah, but the insight is much bigger. Norman saw that we need conceptual models to understand things, to predict outcomes. But, and this is the scary part, he warned these models are, quote, often constructed from fragmentary evidence with only a poor understanding of what is happening.
Fragmentary evidence, poor understanding. That's terrifying when you think about it.
It is.
He was talking about why we can't figure out a thermostat. But if that applies to how we run our lives, our careers, our investments.
They were essentially trying to navigate this incredibly complex world with the wrong user manual, based on flawed instructions.
That explains a lot.
And it's why his work was so groundbreaking. Richard Thaler, the Nobel Prize winner in economics.
Behavioral economics.
Right. Yeah. He saw the universal power of this immediately. Thaler actually cited Norman's work as the breakthrough organizing principle for his book, Nudge.
Really? From product design to economics?
He realized if everyday products need human-centered design, then policies, economic structures, decision-making environments, they all need design based on how humans actually behave, not how economists assume they behave.
Okay, let's make this concrete. You mentioned Thaler. The Save More Tomorrow program is a perfect example, isn't it? It wasn't just one good idea.
No, it's the poster child for this multidisciplinary approach. It's a synthesis.
Right.
So Thaler and his team had this huge problem. People just weren't saving enough for retirement. Even when you showed them the financial benefits, the numbers,
The standard economic model failed.
totally failed. A purely rational economics model says, offer more interest, people save more. Didn't work. So they looked elsewhere. They looked at psychology. And they basically synthesized 4 key mental models from that field.
Okay, walk us through those 4. How did they fit together?
Right. First, they used loss aversion. We all know this one intuitively. People feel the pain of a loss about twice as strongly as the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
Okay, so asking someone to save more now feels like taking money away now. An immediate loss.
Exactly. It hurts. Second, status quo bias. People massively prefer things to stay as they are. Inertia is powerful. Changing your contribution amount. That takes effort. It breaks the status quo.
So any solution had to feel painless and require almost zero effort.
Precisely. Which leads to the third model,
Yeah.
activation energy. This is borrowed from chemistry, actually.
Like the energy needed to start a reaction.
Yeah. How much effort does it take just to start the task? If enrolling in the savings plan is complicated, has lots of forms, most people just won't bother.
Too much friction.
Too much friction. And finally, the fourth one, hyperbolic discounting. We humans are terrible at valuing future rewards compared to immediate ones.
30 years down the road feels like forever. Abstract.
Completely abstract. So saving for that distant future, it just doesn't feel compelling compared to spending the money now.
Okay, so 4 big psychological hurdles. Loss aversion, status quo bias, activation energy, hyperbolic discounting. How did the program design actually, get around them?
This is the brilliant part. It was elegantly designed. Yeah. For loss aversion, they had people commit to increasing their savings rate only when they got a future pay raise.
Ah, so the money wasn't actually in their current paycheck yet.
Never hit their bank account. They never felt the loss of disposable income. It was just reallocating a future theoretical gain. Painless.
Clever.
Then, for status quo bias and activation energy, enrollment was basically a one-time simple opt-in or sometimes even opt-out. And crucially, the increased savings rate automatically became the new default setting with each raise.
So inertia started working for saving, not against it.
Exactly. Once you were in, doing nothing meant saving more over time. And by tying it to the raise, they removed the immediate pain-neutralizing loss aversion, which made that distant future reward seem less, discounted.
Yep.
Hyperbolic discounting overcome.
That's genuinely profound. You're not fighting human nature. You're designing the system around human nature, using it for good.
That's the essence of good design, right?
And the results were pretty staggering.
Huge. The program helped people basically triple their savings rate.
Yeah.
Triple. Without feeling any pinch in their current lifestyle.
Wow.
And that's just the initial rate. Factor in compounding over decades.
Mm-hmm.
The source material we looked at suggests people might end up retiring with something like 10 times the money they would have saved otherwise.
10 times the money
I
with
know.
zero extra effort from the person.
Zero extra ongoing effort, just a better initial design. It just shows the sheer magnitude of impact, the right map, the map that actually reflects behavioral reality can have.
That really drives home Alan Kay's point, doesn't it? Point of view is worth 80 IQ points.
Absolutely. Raw brain power doesn't help if your starting perspective, your map, is fundamentally flawed.
Stephen Covey used a great analogy for this in The 7 Habits, the Map of Chicago one.
Oh yeah, the Covey map analogy. It's simple, but gets the point across so well.
Remind us how it goes.
He says, look, if you're driving and you have an accurate map of Chicago, then yeah, diligence, positive attitude, problem-solving skills, they all matter when you hit traffic or a detour.
Sure.
But if your map is actually a perfectly detailed, beautifully printed map of St. Louis, then your diligence and positive attitude are worse than useless. They just help you get further and further lost, faster and faster, with more confidence.
Right. Effort in the wrong direction.
As Covey put it, the first and most important requirement is the accuracy of the map. Everything else, our attitudes, our behaviors, flows directly from our underlying assumptions, our schema, our filter, our map.
Which brings us to maybe the most dangerous part. What happens when people vaguely realize the map might be wrong? They often don't stop. They do something else.
They bend the map.
Bend the map. Explain me.
It's a term that comes up in survival psychology, like in the book Deep Survival. When hikers get seriously lost, a common and often fatal pattern is this. They look at their map, they look at the terrain, and they see a mismatch.
Okay, reality check.
But instead of concluding, okay, I must be lost, my position on the map is wrong, they conclude the map must be right, and therefore that mountain must be the one on the map, even if it looks wrong. Or maybe the stream isn't marked correctly.
They force reality to fit their incorrect assumption about where they are.
Exactly. They bend reality to fit the map instead of correcting the map based on reality.
Okay.
And then they double down. They press on even harder and faster, convinced they just need more effort to make the flawed map work.
That intense effort, the grit, the determination we admire.
All pointed catastrophically in the wrong direction. It's the absolute definition of a smart mistake, using intelligence and effort to compound an initial error.
But there's a crucial physical dimension to this too, isn't there?
Right.
In the hiker example, that frantic effort has consequences.
Huge consequences. That pushing harder means sacrificing rest, sacrificing sleep. And this physical exhaustion becomes an accelerant for terrible decision-making.
How so? Neurologically.
Yes. Fatigue literally distorts cognition. It starts to neurologically decouple the rational prefrontal cortex.
The planning executive function part of the brain.
Right, the CEO of the brain.
Mm.
It decouples it from the more primitive emotional amygdala, the threat detection fight or flight center.
Wait, so being tired physically hobbles the part of your brain you need most to realize you're making a mistake?
Precisely. The prefrontal cortex goes partially or even largely offline. The amygdala takes over, you lose impulse control, nuanced judgment, the ability to rationally check your assumptions. You start running on instinct, panic, and confirmation bias.
You become psychologically and neurologically incapable of seeing you need to change course.
You're locked in.
Okay, that link is vital for today. You mentioned the AI angle earlier. Connect bending the map and this fatigue effect to how we use AI now.
It maps directly. If you're working fast, maybe you're tired, stressed, and you get an output from an AI. And the LLM gives you a strategy, an analysis, whatever. If that output is based on slawed data you fed it, or if the AI itself has hallucinated plausible-sounding nonsense, the human tendency is often to trust it, especially if it looks polished and confident.
The commitment bias kicks in. Trust the first answer.
Right. And then you double down with diligence, pushing forward based on that flawed AI output. You're essentially bending the map, forcing your actions to fit the AI's flawed reality, but now at the speed of light.
Accelerating the journey to getting profoundly lost.
Exactly. With a fancy AI-generated report proving you're on the right track, we desperately need our rational, rested prefrontal cortex online to pause, question the premise, interrogate the output, and ask, is this map actually right? And this problem of the wrong map, it gets even worse when our maps are deliberately or just habitually too narrow, when we rely on just one area of expertise.
Ah, the specialization trap. Which leads us straight to Munger's most famous line, the one everyone knows but maybe doesn't fully internalize.
To a man with a hammer, the world looks like a nail.
There it is. The hammer is that single viewpoint, right? That
Yeah.
one mental model or specialty you try to apply everywhere.
Munger used the example of a gallbladder surgeon he knew. Probably a brilliant technician, highly skilled at gallbladder surgery.
Sure.
But because that was his hammer, he tended to see gallbladder problems everywhere, recommending surgery perhaps more often than a broader view might warrant.
Yeah.
It was driven partly by incentives, sure, but also just by the narrow focus of his expertise. His model was problem surgical intervention.
It's hard to see other solutions when your tool is so specific. The source material we looked at had a really chilling historical example of this from Bellevue.
Oh, the Oshinsky book. Yeah, the 1870s surgeon.
Tell that story. It's pretty stark.
Right, so this was a highly educated surgeon at a top institution, but he became absolutely convinced that his hammer circumcision was a cure-all
A cure-all for what?
for an unbelievable range of conditions. Clubfoot, epilepsy, even serious mental illnesses. Just bizarre stuff.
And the evidence.
The results were apparently horrific, completely unsupportive of his hypothesis.
Yeah.
But did he stop? No. He was committed. His tool had to be right. The world was just wrong or the patients weren't responding correctly. He kept going.
That level of commitment bias overriding direct factual evidence in a professional, supposedly objective setting, it's deeply unsettling.
It really highlights the power of ideology, of being wedded to your model.
Yeah.
And the material kind of subtly notes a modern echo.
Which is
The persistence of routine infant circumcision in the U.S. today. A practice rooted in very different historical and medical contexts, but which continues largely due to status quo bias tradition rather than, say, a fresh, multidisciplinary analysis of current evidence. The hammer persists.
So, okay, specialization creates the hammer problem. How do we counteract that? Is broad worldly wisdom really necessary if you're, say, a top neurosurgeon? Don't you just need to be good at neurosurgery?
Well, according to the best practitioners, absolutely not. You need both. Dr. Jerome Groopman, in How Doctors Think, quotes another physician, Dr. Eric Cassell.
What did Cassell say?
He argued forcefully that we should never confuse highly technical, even complicated medical knowledge with the complex, many-sided, worldly-wise knowledge we expect of the best physicians.
Technical skill versus wisdom.
Exactly. Technical knowledge is about the procedure. Worldly wisdom is about the person, the context, the whole system.
What happens in practice when a specialist lacks that broader map? What mistakes do they make?
Groupman points out a couple of key traps. First, specialists, being experts in complex solutions, sometimes overtreat simple problems.
Like using a sledgehammer on a thumbtack.
Kind of. They might jump to expensive tests or interventions when maybe watchful waiting or a simple lifestyle change would be enough. They reach for their complicated hammer first.
Okay.
And paradoxically, they can also miss important clues about problems outside their specific domain. The cardiologist might dismiss a digestive complaint. The orthopedist might ignore a neurological symptom because it doesn't fit their specialized model. Their lens filters out crucial but irrelevant data.
It sounds like the absolute bedrock principle here has to be humility.
Yes. Intellectual humility.
Recognizing the edges of your competence, knowing where your hammer stops being useful, defining your circle of competence.
That's the core of it. Munger hits this hard too. He says, highly intelligent people are often the worst at this because they feel their smarts should apply everywhere.
Right.
So defining that circle and applying a margin of safety to its edges, basically, admitting you might be wrong or incomplete, leaving room for error that's critical for good decisions.
And tied closely to knowing your limits is building up a database of reality checks, right? Understanding base rates.
Yes, base rates are crucial. They're the statistical averages, the outside view. They protect us from fooling ourselves with wishful thinking or vivid anecdotes.
Like the classic example of the startup founder thinking they'll be the next unicorn, ignoring the base rate of startup failure.
Exactly. Or the example from neuroscientist Dr. Matthew Walker about sleep. We all hear stories, maybe know someone, who claims to thrive on 4 or 5 hours.
The sleep is for the weak myth.
Right. But Walker lays out the brutal base rate.
Yeah.
If you consistently get 6 hours of sleep or less, statistically, you are more likely to be struck by lightning than you are to be able to function optimally without cognitive impairment.
Struck by lightning, that's vivid.
It's meant to be jarring because we so easily dismiss the base rate reality when it clashes with our ego or our desires.
Why do we dismiss it so easily, especially something as fundamental as sleep?
Because the damage isn't always obvious moment to moment, but it's neurological. Walker explains that when you're sleep deprived, which affects something like 70% of adults in developed nations,
70%.
your rational prefrontal cortex is essentially operating in a degraded state. It's partially decoupled, sometimes he says essentially offline, disabled.
Disabled?
Functionally, yes. You can't learn properly, you can't regulate your emotions well, you certainly can't make complex, long-term rational decisions effectively. You are cognitively compromised, period.
So the very tool we rely on for success, our rational brain, is being systematically handicapped by maybe 7 out of 10 professionals trying to get ahead.
It's a staggering thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't possibly be happier, healthier, wealthier, more successful if your core cognitive hardware is running at half power or less.
It really underscores why multidisciplinary thinking is essential.
Yeah.
You have to pull in models from biology, from neuroscience, not just economics or your specific field. Your own cognitive state has to be part of the map.
It has to be variable number 1 in the decision equation. If you're running on fumes, your map is inaccurate, guaranteed. Building that better map starts with understanding the fundamental models of being human.
Okay, let's pivot to the future because this ties directly into AI. The saying now is everywhere, right? AI won't take your job.
But someone leveraging AI to the max will. Yeah, we hear it constantly.
And the speed, the information overload, it's transforming everything. AI is clearly a massive force multiplier.
Unprecedented. The source material reviewed from Poor Ash's Almanac mentions how projects like writing deeply researched complex pieces, AI can potentially cut the time and effort by 50%, maybe more. The efficiency gains are just enormous.
Huge potential. But speed with a broken compass is just a faster way to crash.
Exactly. The counterbalance is always AI is fundamentally garbage in, garbage out, or maybe more like garbage in, convincingly packaged and confidently delivered garbage out.
Huh. Yeah, that's better.
Which is why mental models become more critical, not less. They give us the framework to ask the right questions, to craft effective prompts,
Right.
to spot the inevitable AI hallucinations, and just generally to sift through the increasing tide of AI slop out there. Without a good map, we're just asking a very fast, very articulate machine to guide us rapidly towards who knows where. Probably the wrong place.
Let's dig into why AI makes certain types of errors that require human judgment. Why is asking, say, ChatGPT for complex advice investment strategy, organizational design often flawed, even dangerous?
It comes down to how they think, or rather how they process information. LLMs are masters of pattern matching.
Okay.
They analyze vast amounts of text data and predict the most statistically likely sequence of words to follow a prompt. They're incredibly good at mimicking human language patterns.
But they don't understand in the human sense.
Not really. They generally lack true principle-based reasoning. They don't inherently grasp cause and effect, underlying meaning, ethics, or those crucial second-order consequences. They can recite a principle if it was in their training data, but they can't flexibly apply it to a novel situation while accounting for context or, say, human irrationality.
So if their training data is full of biased patterns, flawed historical assumptions, or just correlations mistaken for causation.
The AI will reproduce those patterns brilliantly and confidently.
Okay, so this is where the multidisciplinary lattice work comes in as our defense, our cognitive immune system.
That's a great way to put it, a cognitive immune system. By consciously bringing different models to bear, we gain the perspective needed to actually interrogate the AI's output, to question it intelligently. It shifts the AI from being a potential black box oracle we blindly trust
Right.
to being a powerful tool that we direct and evaluate.
Okay, give us a specific example. How would applying, say, the incentive model help us catch an AI error?
Okay, good one. Let's say you ask an LLM for advice on optimizing your investment portfolio.
Common use case.
Right. The LLM scans billions of data points, articles, websites, maybe even forum discussions about finance. I suppose a significant chunk of that data came from sources that are, shall we say, incentivized to promote certain products.
Like financial advisors pushing high commission funds.
Exactly. Or platforms promoting complex insurance products they get paid well to sell. The AI, just pattern matching, might see these products frequently associated with good advice or success in its data, and so it recommends them as the statistically probable best option.
Plausible sounds expert.
Looks great. But you, the human user, apply the incentive model. You stop and ask the simple question, cui bono? Who benefits if I follow this recommendation? And suddenly you realize, wait a minute, this recommendation might be heavily skewed by the commission structures prevalent in the training data, not by what's actually best for my long-term, low-fee return. The incentive model helps you sniff out the bias embedded in the patterns the AI just spat back out.
That flips the dynamic completely. We move from passive acceptance to active interrogation. What other critical human questions, what other models do we need to apply to AI output?
Oh, besides incentives, a huge one is second-order effects, unintended consequences.
Okay.
AI is often good at the first order. Do A to achieve B, optimize for efficiency, maximize clicks, whatever. But complex systems rarely stop there. Doing A might also cause C, D, and E down the line, things you didn't want.
Like optimizing a factory floor purely for speed might lead to burnout and accidents.
Exactly. Human judgment has to step back and ask, what are the knock-on effects, the hidden costs, the societal impact, the long-term fallout of this seemingly efficient solution? We also need to constantly check. Is this based on mere correlation, two things happening together? Or is there actual multi-causality understood here, the complex web of factors driving the outcome? AI often struggles with that distinction.
So ultimately, human wisdom, guided by these models, has to remain the final check. The arbiter of whether the AI's output aligns with truth, ethics, purpose.
It has to be. Technology is a tool. We need the wisdom to wield it well. So if we agree the quality of the map is paramount, we need to think about how to build a map that's actually useful, maximum utility.
Utility. That reminds me of the historian John Lewis Gaddis and his ideas about maps. He pointed out that the whole point of a map is that it's an abstraction, right?
Exactly. A map that was perfectly one-to-one scale with the territory would be useless. It would be the territory.
Right, couldn't fold it.
You couldn't use it. Gaddis stressed there's no such thing as a single correct map. The form of the map has to reflect its purpose.
Like a highway map shows roads and exits, not property lines. A globe shows continents, not street corners.
Precisely. Different abstractions for different tasks. And Gaddis extends this idea to how we should think about theory itself. He sees mental models, in a way, as a form of theory, but useful theory, like a sketch.
A sketch. How so?
He describes theory not as some dense, rigid doctrine, but as a sketch that conveys complexity usably. It pulls out the essential patterns, the key lessons from this infinite variety of history and human experience.
Ah, I see.
Mental models are these reliable sketches. They're designed to transmit vital, even if incomplete, information quickly. They're frameworks you can recognize and apply when a new situation pops up.
That distinction, utility versus, say, traditional academic learning, feels really important. I remember reading the chronobiologist Till Roenberg on this.
Cool.
He talked about the big problem in schools often being the dissociation between the theory and its application, which leads to that constant student question.
Well, why do we have to learn this?
Exactly. When am I ever going to use this?
But when you're learning multidisciplinary rationality, maybe through something like Poor Ash's Almanac, the utility is front and center. It's immediate.
You're not memorizing, I don't know, pointless details about 18th century agricultural practices unless they illustrate a timeless model like, say, Tragedy of the Commons.
Right. You're acquiring models, tools, sketches that help you navigate the world you actually live in. Negotiations, project management, investing decisions, difficult conversations, they're maps designed for the terrain you face daily.
Okay, and within that utility focus, there's another key distinction. Practices versus principles.
Absolutely vital. Practices are the how-tos. They're specific techniques, methods, and they're often transient. They expire.
Like a specific sales tactic that works for a while, then stops.
Exactly. Principles, on the other hand, are the underlying truths, the fundamental laws. They're timeless, universal. Stephen Covey hammered this point home too.
What was Covey's take?
He argued that these timeless principles, things like fairness, integrity, contribution, potential, they surface again and again across cultures and history. And whether a society or a company or an individual aligns with them ultimately determines if they move towards survival and stability or disintegration and destruction. Strong words.
Wow. Can we use the sports analogy from the source? That helped clarify it for me.
Yeah, the football one.
Yeah.
Okay, so a specific defensive scheme, say a cover two zone, that's a practice.
Okay.
And maybe next season, offenses figure out how to beat it consistently. The practice becomes less effective.
It expires.
But the underlying principle may be something like good tackling, requires proper footwork and leverage that remains true regardless of the scheme. It's universal across positions, eras, even sports.
Footwork is always footwork.
Right. Or think about empathy. Empathy is a timeless principle of effective communication. But the communication practices driven by empathy will look totally different depending on whether you're talking to your doctor,
Needs precise, technical language.
or your boss,
Needs conciseness, data, bottom line.
or your 8-year-old nephew.
Needs simplicity, patience, maybe humor.
Exactly. The core principle, understanding the other's perspective, stays the same. The practice adapts to the context.
So the goal isn't just to collect individual principles, but to weave them together. Back to Munger's lattice work of mental models, it has to be integrated.
It must be integrated. That was Munger's big critique. Most people, even smart ones, tend to rely on just one or two models maybe from their profession, like economics or engineering.
The hammer problem again.
Right. And they try to solve every problem using that same limited toolkit. Munger called that a profoundly dumb way of handling problems. The lattice work forces the models to interact. It creates connections, checks and balances.
It makes things fit together.
Things gradually get to fit together in a way that enhances cognition, as he put it. If your economic model suggests one course of action, but your psychological model flags a potential behavioral pitfall, that conflict is productive. It forces you to dig deeper, to find a more robust solution.
That sounds a lot like how Richard Feynman approached physics, didn't he? Enforcing logical consistency.
Exactly like Feynman. He believed that if you truly understand something, it has to be logically consistent with everything else fundamental that you know. It can't contradict basic laws of physics or logic elsewhere.
And the most interesting part for him was
The inconsistency. The thing that doesn't fit, he said, that's where the real learning happens. That discrepancy is a signpost pointing towards a gap in your understanding, or maybe even a flaw in the existing models. It pushes science forward.
okay, let's apply that Feynman test as a filter for AI output. Say an AI gives me a business strategy. How does enforcing logical consistency help me find potential flaws?
You run the AI's recommendation through your own lattice work. Test it against different models.
Yeah.
So the AI proposes a super efficient, lean organizational structure. Great. Fits the economic efficiency model perfectly.
It's good on paper.
But then you run it through your psychological models. What about burnout? What about loss of informal networks? What about the impact on morale and creativity? Systems thinking model.
Ah, you see the potential conflicts.
Right. The proposed structure might be economically optimal in a narrow sense, but it violates principles of human motivation and sustainable systems. The misfit between the models, the logical inconsistency when viewed through multiple lenses, signals that the AI solution is incomplete, maybe even destructive. It likely failed to account for critical human variables.
So consciously searching for those internal inconsistencies across different domains is a powerful way to spot subtle AI errors, the ones that sound logical in isolation but fall apart in the real, messy, multidisciplinary world.
It's one of the best defenses we have, because the AI won't necessarily see those cross-domain conflicts unless explicitly trained to or prompted very carefully.
And that need for logical consistency, for facing facts that don't fit, it's not just for evaluating AI. It's crucial for overcoming our own irrationality, particularly commitment bias.
Oh, hugely. Commitment bias, that tendency to stick with our beliefs even when faced with contrary evidence, is a major source of human error. Writers like Megan McArdle, psychologists like Tavris and Aronson, they talk about how irrationality often involves this non-falsifiability.
Meaning the argument shifts?
Yeah, the goalposts move. Facts that contradict the core belief are ignored, dismissed, explained away. The commitment is to the theory, not to the truth. You're bending the map again.
And it's always so much easier to see other people doing this, isn't it? Mark Twain had that great line.
Nothing so needs reforming as other people's habits. Classic
Yeah.
Twain. Spotting the flaws in others' maps is easy.
Why is seeing our own so hard?
Well, Tavris and Aronson explain it well. It takes real cognitive effort, sustained attention, and frankly, a big dose of intellectual humility to even notice our own inconsistencies and biases, let alone correct them. Our brains are wired for self-justification.
So what's the way out? How do we get better at maintaining our own map's accuracy?
It's not easy, but the path is clear. Avoid rigid ideology. Be willing to update your beliefs. Actively cultivate a growth mindset. See challenges to your views as opportunities to learn, not threats to your ego. And critically, think probabilistically.
Probabilistically, meaning shades of gray.
Exactly. Avoid absolute certainty. Think in terms of likelihoods, ranges, confidence intervals. Acknowledge uncertainty. Building and maintaining this latticework of mental models isn't a one-time task. It requires constant curiosity, constant testing against reality, and the humility to redraw the map whenever necessary. It's our best defense against our own built-in cognitive flaws.
Okay, so if there's one single thing to take away from this deep dive today, drawing on the thinking from Poor Ash's Almanac, what should it be?
I think it has to be this. Truly effective decision-making, the kind that leads to better outcomes in the long run, rests almost entirely on the quality and the breadth of your conceptual map.
Not just raw intelligence, not just effort.
No. Those things help, but only if the map is right. A flawed map just leads you astray faster.
So here's a challenge for everyone listening. How can you put this into practice, like, right away?
Okay, try this. The very next time you encounter a piece of information, could be advice from a colleague, a strong opinion you read online, or yes, an output from an AI. Just pause.
Pause before reacting.
Yeah, and ask yourself, which mental model or models are shaping this answer? Is it purely economic? Is it considering psychological biases? Are second-order effects being ignored?
Don't just accept it and push forward with diligence.
Right. Don't just assume the map is right. Ask yourself consciously, am I potentially bending the map here? Am I forcing reality to fit this answer, or does the answer truly reflect the complex territory I'm facing? Just that pause, that question, can make a huge difference.
That feels crucial, especially now, as AI keeps accelerating everything, offering these incredibly fast, often incredibly confident answers.
That human layer of judgment, the ability to step back, apply these timeless principles from across disciplines, check the map against the territory. That becomes our single greatest non-replicable advantage.
We have to cultivate it. We have to build and maintain that lattice work.
With curiosity, rigor, and humility.
Excellent. Well, this has been fascinating.
You can find the full write-up on this and many more guided learning journeys into multidisciplinary rationality, the frameworks that really do underpin good judgment, over at Poor Ash's Almanac from Escalade Capital.
Definitely check that out.
And please join us next time as we dig into another essential mental model, another tool to sharpen your judgment and help ensure that human wisdom stays firmly at the center, especially in this world increasingly shaped by technology and AI.